Dr. Berger, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to meet you. Geno will be on momentarily. Thank you for agreeing to coming out to our retreat. We feel that in men's work, emotional sobriety is a very important topic these days. And mm, the continuation of the tiers of things of working through Richard's work,
Yes.
we felt it was very important to address this topic. Now, as I understand, you did the MROP, is that correct?
Yes, I did. Yes,
When
I
was
did.
that?
Boy, that was way back. That had to be, God, I would imagine that would be over 20 years ago. When I went to that um, initiation weekend, it was held in Julian, California, which is the Apple uh, uh, city of California. And it was held at a Catholic retreat. And it was an incredibly powerful weekend. I mean, it really opened my eyes to so many things. At that point in time, I probably had around at least 20 some years of recovery. So I was introduced to Richard Rohr's work through a good friend of mine by the name of Herb Kagan. And he says, Herb was um, in a seminary when he was younger to become a priest, but then his alcoholism got in the way of that. But now that he's in recovery, he's really, really brought all of that work back, and he found Richard's work. He was so excited. He says, "You got to meet this guy. I think you'll love his brand of spirituality." And so I went to a lecture that Richard did on men and spirituality, which is still one of my favorite talks of his. And what he was able to capture in that talk was to really, for me, understand the journey that I had been on as a man and the struggles that I had faced. And it was incredibly illuminating. I mean, I learned so much from that talk that he gave, and it really inspired me to go and do that initiation weekend that he did. And those 3.5, 4 days were very, very, very valuable. And then later on, I was invited to be one of the 100 men that was invited to the Ghost Ranch to learn how to do initiation weekends and to pass this work on, which I've done several weekends with my dear friend Herb Kagan in Palos Verdes. We went back and we had some initiation weekends for men in recovery, which were just great. But I'm so excited, Scott. First of all, it's an honor to be invited to participate in Illuman in the weekend that you guys have created for men to come and to create an atmosphere for men to really take a look at themselves, a safe atmosphere to really get down and get honest with who we are, but more importantly, in my opinion, who we are not. You see, who we are not reflects what I would call the holes in our existence. And I spell that HOLE, not WH, but the holes in our existence. And our development is always going to create that kind of fragmentation. And a fragmentation leads a personality. Certain parts of us are going to be essential and are going to be emphasized. Other parts of us are going to be, yeah, they'll be there, but they won't be a big deal and a big part of our personality. And other parts we're going to eschew, we're going to want to disown and not have anything to do with. So we are fragmented. And that fragmentation means it's okay for me to behave like this, but it's not okay for me to be like that.
Mhm.
And being a man in our culture creates a tremendous amount of fragmentation in itself. As we know, all of the quote man rules are not rules that help you become a whole person. That's not what they're about, man. They do not emphasize integration or an integrated masculinity. What they do is they emphasize once again certain parts of us are okay and other parts of us aren't. I especially it's an interesting experience I had. I started to get involved in the men's movement way back when, um, probably in the 1970s. Some of the early books were written by Warren Farrell.
Mm.
And there was another fellow, I can't remember his name right now. And, they started to talk about the men's issues and stuff like that. And it was so important to me because feminism was so strong and loud. I was feeling guilty about being a man. I did not want to own any of my masculinity at all. I wanted to be what Robert Bly ended up calling a soft male, right? Somehow someone that's acceptable to women. And I realized that I was doing the same thing there that I had done my whole life, that I had lost my center of gravity, which means I had lost myself.
Mhm.
So, for me, emotional sobriety is a path to reclaiming our emotional center of gravity. For me, reclaiming my ability to strive to be more of a whole person. Because the more I have available to me, meaning within me, inside of me, the better I am to cope. If in this situation it requires me to be strong and to be firm about something, I want to be able to do that. In this situation, I might need to be soft and more empathic and more understanding. Well, I want to have that side of me available too. So in emotional sobriety, I think about it as a way of us having a new relationship with ourselves, Scott. That's a good way to think about it. It's really facing who we are and who we aren't. And what I like to tell people that I work with all the time is emotional sobriety is we see that I don't think we're sick. I think we're all stuck. I don't see us as sick. I see us as developmentally stuck. And we are stuck at a stage of development that makes it very hard to cope well with life.
That is excellent. That's an outstanding point, and I agree on that. We are definitely stuck in the men's work that we do. We see that constantly. Um, One thing, can we address that? A lot of people, not just men, shy away from the word sobriety. But in Richard's book, Breathing Underwater, he mentions that he noticed at the minimum, everyone's at least addicted to their own way of thinking. So Richard brought that up a long time ago. And in my own recovery as an alcoholic and in my own work with who I work with the homeless, sobriety is not about abstaining or anything, or, the shame and guilt of sobriety. How would you frame sobriety to those who think that, well, I'm not an addict, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not. How would you frame the phrase or the word sobriety?
Mhm. Well, it's a good point, and it is unfortunate because, it's that all that moralism and moralistic approach to dealing with people that have had problems with addiction and stuff. It's really been a big part of the stigma that we're trying to get past. But in terms of emotional sobriety, see what I'm going to try to help the men realize when they come to this retreat is that they are dependent. Yeah, they may be dependent on a substance or whatever it is, like I was at one point in my life. But the dependency I'm going to have them look at is an emotional dependency. And that's what Bill Wilson really was calling us out to do back in the 50s, that he realized that his sense of self was so dependent on what was happening to him. And if things went his way, then he was okay. And if things didn't go his way, then he wasn't okay. And for Bill, he tried to manipulate things and tried to get things to go his way. That's one way that people deal with that frustration. But when things didn't go his way and he couldn't manipulate the situation, he just got depressed. That's what he realized. Well, I think emotional sobriety is about becoming emotionally free and not emotionally dependent on people, places, and things for our self-esteem, for our validation, for our sense of self. So when we talk about sobriety in this aspect, we are looking at emotional freedom or emotional autonomy. For me to be able to be my own person and not to be overly influenced by people, places, or things that are around me.
That's an excellent point. And yes, that freedom. I've used Father Greg Boyle's term, getting in touch with your inherent goodness that you were born with. And to me, that's been a very clarifying statement to get in touch with that inherent goodness. But as I'm not sure, did in your MROP, was Rumi ever quoted or?
Oh, a lot. A lot,
Right. And
yes. Yeah.
then in the MROP, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't done it yet, but the phrase I love is your task is not to seek love, but to search and remove all the barriers you build against it. Because we're born with love, by love, for love. So that's our inherent nature. But how do you see emotions getting in the way of recognizing that?
Well, it's a very interesting thing. You see that there's, first of all, we've got to understand that in our culture, we don't really understand love well.
Mm.
We have a very adolescent idea of it, and it's idealized and romanticized a lot. What I mean by that is that we fused love with dependency. If I'm in love with someone, the expectations surrounding that create an impossible relationship. No one can live up to all the expectations we have because if I'm dependent on you, it means that I'm looking at you to take care of me. So we don't go into a relationship, is what Martin Buber described as I to thou. It becomes I to it. I'm looking at you as an object that's going to somehow make me whole, that's going to make me okay, that's going to help complete who I am. And we talk about that all the time. You hear love being talked about. I find my better half. I mean, all this other nonsense. Well, that's a form of love. Eric Fromm called it immature love. When love is based on need and dependency, it's immature. And there's going to be a lot of problems if we do not recognize it for what it is. And we
Mhm.
think it's really love. We're going to really, really fool ourselves. And also, I think get to a point where we want to just throw in the towel and say, if this is what love is about, I don't want anything to do with it because it's obviously doesn't work for me. And what doesn't work is the ideas we have about it. So mature love is not a love that's based on dependency. It's a love based on, I want you, I love you because I want you. It's not that I love you because I need you. It's based on, I want to be with you, not that I need to. So we come into the relationship in a very different way. I'm not looking for you to take care of me. I'm looking to enjoy you and to enjoy a life with you. I'm not looking for you to take care of me. That's a whole different kind of relationship, Scott. And so when we talk about freedom and the ability to love, in order to be able to love, we have to address our dependency. Love,
That
love,
is excellent. Yeah.
it's not possible, man. It's just not going to be possible because your dependency is going to generate what we call expectations. Well, first of
Mhm.
all, it generates claims. It generates claims and demands. And this was the insight that Dr. Karen Horney, brilliant psychoanalyst, had. And she saw that what we developed very early on in life are these claims and demands on how the world is supposed to be for us to be okay. Well, because nobody's going to be comfortable going into a relationship, I demand that you act like this if you love me. We're going to clean it up. We're going to make it cognitively acceptable, right? Congruent,
Yeah.
right? So it's not going to create a cognitive dissonance. And so we do that by making it an expectation. Well, if you love me, I expect that you would do what I want you to do. If you love me, I expect that you'd want to spend time with me. If I love you, we have all of these expectations, as Dr. Virginia Satir said, that we put on love and on marriage that it can't fulfill.
Right.
So when my expectations go from I expect you to be this way to an unenforceable rule. If you don't do this, you're doing something wrong. So that's
Yeah.
the trajectory that happens, right? Right? Our dependency generates these claims and demands. These claims and demands morph into expectations. These expectations turn into unenforceable rules that are about how somebody should behave. And if you don't behave that way, you're wrong. Shame on you. What kind of a person on you? You're not a good part. You're not a good wife. You're not a good husband. You're not a good friend. The nonsense goes on and on and on. We need to get away from all of that nonsense. Love has nothing
That's
to do with expectations, man. You cannot love if you're going to come into the relationship with expectations like that. So that's a big part of our work as men, is if we really want to start to learn how to live and love differently, we've got to first take a look at how we don't. I mean, how we are living. We got to become aware of what we're doing before it's possible to change anything. That's why we say self-acceptance and awareness is a prerequisite to change. Without it, change is not possible.
excellent. Yes, absolutely. Excellent points, especially with basically correct. You have to correctly diagnose the problem, and the starts with you. And one of the things I explain to people is that, as you said, these expectations are set up, but you're also allowed to set up boundaries that are healthy, because you don't want to move from, while it enabling and helping look identical, but they're very different. And love doesn't mean just walk all over me, or I'm going to have these expectations, right? So, in this freedom to love, which is really, James Finley puts it as, it's God's joy to love you, and it's your joy to love God, but there's, without the expectation.
Yeah.
Yet we have a culture of expectation, filled with expectations. So, how can we, as men doing our work, how do we get past that? Well, how do we start to work through that?
Yeah. Well, you become aware of it. Like, you see what. Well, let me just say this before we go into that, Scott. Let me just say how this is part of the development. So early on in life, everyone is dependent on their environment for support.
Mhm.
We start out life in utero, and what is that? We are on a life support system, right? And
Mhm.
we're getting all of the nutrients, the oxygen, everything we need for our development is being given to us, right? Through the umbilical cord, right?
Right,
And
right.
as we lay in that embryonic sac, right? So when we're born is when our journey starts. And the minute we're
Mhm.
born, we take the first step towards standing on our own 2 feet. And that is we start to breathe for ourselves. We take responsibility for oxygenating our blood, right? I inhale and I exhale. Does that happen? I want to do that. I want to be alive. I want to be what I can be.
Mhm.
If a child's neurologically intact, they might need a slap in the butt to get their breathing to start. They just are going to automatically breathe because that's who we are. We have inside of us this life force that wants me to support myself. The next thing that happens, it keeps on. There's the rooting and suckling instinct. Now I'm going to
Mhm.
take responsibility for bringing nutrients into my body, right? By
Mhm.
sucking on the mother's breast or whatever, the bottle, whatever I'm being given to nourish me with. That goes on biologically. All of that stuff happens naturally. We become more and more able to stand on our own 2 feet. At some point, we even walk by ourselves without being carried around. You don't have
Well,
to tell a kid to walk. They want to walk. The life force is moving them towards a greater and greater differentiation or separation. So, emotionally, it's not as easy. It's not instinctual. We are so dependent on the environment to develop the ability to emotionally support ourselves. And unfortunately, as Richard has said over and over again, we do not exist in a culture that is based on wisdom. The culture that we exist in is one that is based on it's all about me, and the more I have, the more I am. Two serious problems. Now, we grow up biologically, become adults, but we get stuck in this it's all about me. And the more I have, the more I am syndromes. So those two things are where we're so stuck. This is why you'll see a 40-year-old man, when his wife says something that's quote unquote offensive, he takes it personally. Well, she's not saying, even though she may be
yeah,
directing it at him, it has nothing to do with him. She's dealing with her feelings the way she's dealing with her feelings. He takes it personally because he makes everything about him. That sense of personal importance is a killer. It's hard to
yeah,
function in this world. Well, I'm constantly managing what we call a reflected sense of self. My
yeah,
sense of self depends on how you're behaving.
yeah. That is so true. So true.
So that's the stuff we're going to be getting into. We're going to really get into taking a look at how that happens for us, and not from a point of view as becoming, feeling bad about ourselves. It's just we're stuck in our development. We don't get help moving past it's all about me and this materialism in our culture. We don't get to find a balance. And this is all about finding balance in life. That's what emotional sobriety is about.
Well, thank you very much for that. That is an awesome starting point. And respectful of your time. Is there any things that men can do before our retreat to start to
Yeah, well, I think
get
there
into
are a couple
this?
of things. Yeah, there are a few things. I would encourage every man that is going to come to the retreat to get a hold of Bill's letter on that he wrote that was published in the 1958 Grapevine. There's PDFs all over the internet. You can go to my website and get a PDF copy of that. If you want to get a real jump on things, I would read my latest book, The 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety. That will give you a very, very good basic understanding of emotional sobriety and what we're going to be doing. And I would start to pay attention to and keep, even a little journal and write down every time you get upset or disturbed about something. What happened? What upset you? What disturbed you? And how did you react to it? If you could do that work, you will be well prepared for the work we're going to be doing.
Excellent. We will definitely publish that in the next newsletter, get that out there with your website, and then recommend those that immediately and then start to read up on that. Dr. Berger, thank you so much for your time.
You're
Enjoy
welcome,
your
Scott. Thank you.
vacation, and I
I
look
will.
forward to seeing you in September.
Sounds good, buddy. Take care. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.